Hi, everybody. I'm Andrew Kuykendall.
And I'm Don McCulley, and I've adjusted my microphone, and we're here to talk about This Stuff is Complicated. And the purpose of this is to just share some knowledge we've learned over the years. This industry, the stop loss group CATBIS, has been around for about 15 years. Stop loss, which is the gist of today's conversation, has been around a lot longer. But there's a lot of folks younger in the industry, and we've learned a lot from our mentors over the years. We've learned a lot by collaborating over the years. We want to share some of that because we think it's important to remember the basic blocking and tackling of stop loss are the contracts.
Exactly. And the contracts do many things for us. And one of my favorite things to say about contracts is 4-letter words I wouldn't say in front of my parents at the dinner table.
Like sex and fun?
No, more like bleep and bleep.
Okay.
But more importantly, I want to talk about a word that is not 4 letters. Laser is not a 4-letter word. Lasers can be very scary. And let's define what a laser is first. It is an additional deductible assigned to a specific individual within your plan. So that additional deductible is used to account for expected costs. And those expected costs are most often associated with a very specific diagnosis.
And so when you talk about specific diagnosis, you've got conditional lasers and you've got lasers on an individual. A conditional laser, if I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, has to do with the fact that this person has this condition and we're going to specifically laser just that condition. So anything else they get is not covered by the laser. And then a member laser is just anything they get.
Correct. And there's a lot of art and science when it comes to setting the lasers. Now, the one thing I can tell you about a laser is it's never going to be right to the penny.
Just like art and science are creative and not 100% specific or accurate.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's fine. We don't need it to be exactly accurate to the penny because we don't know exactly what the condition is going to cost. We don't necessarily know what the follow-on care is going to be. But what's very important is the laser is the most effective, efficient, and least costly way to manage that condition.
And it sounds like the methodology for assigning the value of lasers is not 100% set in stone either.
It isn't, because you don't necessarily know if that individual is going to be receiving treatment for a very concerning condition for them, whether it's going to be inpatient or outpatient. You don't know if it's going to be 2 months or 6 months. So really it's an opportunity for the carrier to say, we expect this much in coverage, and anything beyond that we will then pick up.
So a margin of safety, just like in the aggregate contracts and some of the other places where there's always a margin of safety built in.
Exactly. But the best part about a laser, in my opinion, is that that margin of safety does not include any carrier overhead. There are salaries to pay. There's premium tax to pay. There are filing fees to pay. There are bowl games to sponsor. There are commercials to put on television. All of those are part of the overhead for a carrier.
Was that a conversation about football in general, like because they take too much advertising money?
I haven't seen a lot of baseball bowl games.
All right, then.
All right. But what's important here is that we have a patient who is going through a very significant event. And we also have a plan sponsor, most often the employer, and a consultant who are trying to figure out the most effective way to pay for that.
This might be a bit of a non sequitur, but I want to remind folks, because we have to remind ourselves on a regular basis, that this is someone's family member or loved one that's going through this treatment. And as expensive as it is, in ways we might be trying to mitigate that claim, there's still a loved one who's very worried about the future of their well-being. And so all these things are received by us in a de-identified manner. We're not talking about specifically about any one human being. We're talking about the disease state. And unfortunately, it's impacting a human being that's a loved one of this employer and their family members.
Absolutely. And it is an incredibly stressful time for everybody. It certainly is. So understanding how lasers work and when and why they're applied early on in the process can help you prepare and create your communication strategy. And remember that you have a contract for your stop loss, and that is going to cover a period of time. They will not be able to add a laser mid-year. That is going to happen on renewal, or if you are changing from one carrier to the other, that is another opportunity to review that.
So in many respects, there's not a perpetual nature to a laser.
Correct. And because a lot of these disease states that are going to warrant a laser, we can look at dialysis as an example, which is an ongoing recurring event. But at a certain point in time, Medicare takes over the entire cost of that. So understanding the disease state and the timing involved is not necessarily an ongoing laser. It's 33 months. So what you want to do is pay very close attention to your reports. Look for 50% reports. Look for trigger diagnosis reports. These are going to be the ones that have the information you need as a consultant to help your plan sponsor, the employer, understand what's coming down the pike and what you need to be prepared for when it comes to renewal.
So we get those very fancy reports called bordereaux, which is just basically claims and premiums we've collected and paid or are going to have to pay or reimburse, you're sorting those codes to figure out which disease states will pop up next, because you can tell in some respects what the meter of that claim might be, when it'll actually present itself.
Yeah, and we're very fortunate, interesting way to say it, now that ICD-10 is in place, my favorite of the ICDs, because there are predictive claims in there. You can see from using the dialysis, N18.1 is the first mark of the presentation, N18.5 and N18.6 are when you're actually in dialysis. So you will have some predictive codes there that you can review, and with that information, you can then look for risk management vendors or disease management vendors that'll help you control that cost. Let's stick with diabetes for just a second here. Let's stick with dialysis. Dialysis is going to run somewhere between $200,000 and $240,000 a year on average. With the right disease management vendor, we've been able to find solutions for that in the $50,000 to $60,000 a year range.
And that puts it in just the frequent predictable cost bucket.
Exactly. So when you have this information, when you see it coming down the pike in the reports, you have the opportunity to find those risk management vendors. You have the opportunity to coordinate everybody so that you are getting your care effectively, efficiently, and most importantly, taking some of the stress out of what is an incredibly difficult time in somebody's life.
And you talk about care. So site of service is really what is one of the driving cost or states, because if you get it at a facility, a hospital, it's more expensive than if you get it at home.
Overwhelmingly so, yes, but that's going to be a topic for another day.
All right, then.
What I want to get through the key 3 things I want you to remember about lasers right here today. First and foremost, know that a laser is the most efficient and least expensive way to accommodate a known risk. Secondly, understand where and how that occurs. It occurs on renewal. It occurs when changing carriers. So there are different contract provisions that will help people out. We'll discuss those a little bit later, but understand it's not going to happen mid-year. And ultimately, by reading the reports, working with your employers, you as the consultant can help them find the risk management tools that are going to reduce those costs overall.
All right. Well, your T-shirt has not been mentioned so far, but I look at it and think, get down with your bad self. What does it say to the audience?
It's Les Claypool's Frog Brigade. I mean, I saw them up at State Line, Nevada. That was the tour when they played the entirety of Pink Floyd's Animals. Now, this is an 800-seat club in State Line, Nevada, and it was the best laser light show I've ever seen.
And now we know the tie back.
And the best part of all, they closed with Dee's Diner. Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it.